updated Kibler list. So
Right.
Brian Kibler, if you're watching, he is playing the 75 you suggested, complete with the Gruul Guildgate as one of his lands, replacing the Kessig Wolf Run. He is up against Eric Vasilevsky, who is on a fairly traditional Jund list.
Yeah. Eric Vasilevsky is a local Salt Lake City player. He's playing a traditional Jund list, as you'd said, probably a little more oriented toward control decks. He has 2 Garuks, 2 Rakdos returns.
Yes.
And does not play any of the Lifebane zombies.
He's also not playing any Lilianas, not playing any of the things for anti-banned hexproof, nothing like Devour Flesh either. Jacob Tobey, on the other hand, as you see with the Game Day Strangleroot Geist on turn 2, he's going to knock Eric down to 18 life. He is playing the traditional Kibler aggro deck that we have come to know and love. He's got the Chandra Pyromasters in the sideboard over the Gruul Guildgates. This is the completely updated list.
Yeah. So one thing which we saw this matchup play out a little bit round 1, is that pre-board Strangleroot Geist is a really effective weapon for the red-green aggro deck. That's because Jund, by and large, has moved away from Pillar of Flame. There's actually 0 pillars in the main deck for Vasilevsky. So killing Strangleroot Geist is very hard. What he instead usually tries to do is trump it. Just play a Thragtusk, play something that stops it from attacking.
So Domri Raid came down on turn 3 for Jacob Tobey to catch you guys back up on the action. That found a Flinthoof Boar with the +1 activation. Jacob then attacked with his Strangleroot Geist, and Abrupt Decay took down the Domri Raid. Eric then played a Strangleroot Geist, a Scavenging Ooze on his 3rd turn. Jacob played another Domri Raid, used it to fight the Scavenging Ooze with his Strangleroot Geist, making it a 3/2 and attacking for 3.
So Tobey found a really good window there. He actually managed to let Strangleroot Geist fight with Scavenging Ooze. Once Scavenging Ooze becomes a 4/4, it's really a difficult card for the red-green aggro deck to deal with, so the fact that he was able to deal with it so early was really powerful. That said, now that the fight's down for Domri, that provides an opportunity for Vasilevsky to safely play Olivia Voldaren, which is a card that Tobey has to answer.
Absolutely, and Olivia Voldaren on turn 4, after we've seen 2 copies of Domri, means that there are fewer options for Jacob Tobey's deck. Fortunately for him, he does have...
Does he have the Mizium Mortars?
He does have the Mizium Mortars in hand to be able to take down the ubiquitous Jund flyer there after knocking Eric down to 10.
Yeah, that's one of 3 Mizium Mortars in his deck. It's 4 Domris and 3 Mizium Mortars are the only actual removal spells that he has.
Yep.
So a really good, probably the best use of that card in this matchup.
It looks like we found an elf off of a Domri +1 activation. And we're also going to add a post-combat, is this post-combat Flinthoof Boar? Yes.
Yep, a post-combat Flinthoof Boar, so a little
because
bit...
we're also adding this elf.
Right. I'm wondering if that's a little bit, sometimes maybe the Domri activation should have came first there. Vasilevsky's going to try to stabilize here with a Thragtusk, but there's a pretty imposing board on the other side for him.
Yeah, Eric did not have the turn 2 Farseek that so many Jund decks desperately need, although he did draw it later in the game, which is not obviously where you want that card to be.
Right.
The 2nd place list from Calgary, the Grand Prix Calgary, eschewed Farseek entirely. Didn't even play Farseek at all. And that is certainly a very unusual thing, and in this matchup, it's much more important to get up to the mana advantage, because you need to play Thragtusk on turn 4 if you can.
Right. So it looks like here what Tobey's going to try to do, we saw another Strangleroot Geist join the battlefield, is that rather than answer the Thragtusk, he's just going to try to press through the Thragtusk. There's a certain point, I think, which the regular aggro deck, because it has so few answers to creatures, it starts answering them just by attacking past them.
And I actually thought that might have had to, if he didn't have the Mizium Mortars, he would have had to do that last turn. But luckily he had another out to be able to take out the 3/3 flyer. So Eric is going to block the 2/1 Strangleroot Geist.
And we're going to see a Rampager here.
Yep, and then Strangleroot Geist is going to go on a Rampage, trample over for 3 itself.
Yeah, and I do like the fact that Vasilevsky blocked the Strangleroot Geist there. That was the only block he could have made where he still gets the trade off. And I think we're going to see a huge miss here by Jacob Tobey.
I agree.
think he missed that the Strangleroot Geist could undie back here.
It was just a Lightning Mauler that didn't pair there, or I guess did pair with something that was already on the board, to drop Eric to 5. So he's not going to have an additional 3/2 in play. Although technically it's still on the stack because we were still resolving the Beast trigger.
Yes, right now if he reached in his graveyard and put the Strangleroot Geist into play, it would still work. But the moment...
But not anymore.
Not anymore. Now he's missed it as he activated
Dome Re-Raid, and he missed with it. So Eric does have a slight window here.
Yeah, he's going to need some more removal spells. It looks like he has some lands, a Garruk Primal Hunter, a Farseek.
Yeah, he's got a handful of green spells. Thragtusk is not a bad place to start, though.
No, that's actually one of the better plays he could make here. Really just buying more time, because every time Jacob's attacking, he's expending resources. As we saw there, that first Thragtusk, a Gorklan Rampager and a Strangleroot Geist traded with the front half of a Thragtusk. So that's really good card advantage for the Jund deck, and he just needs to continue to stay alive long enough so that he can make more of these plays. And if he does, he stands to win the game.
So we're going to look for another creature on top. We're going to miss. Jacob Tobey now has to ponder his attacks here, and I think that he is just going to swing in with the 2 creatures. Now, not swinging in with the elf, does that signal that we don't have Gorklan Rampager? Or do you think that he could have Gorklan Rampager either way?
He doesn't want to have doesn't have Gorklan Rampager, or he doesn't want to trade that mana elf with the front half of a Thragtusk. Because right now if Thragtusk blocks the Arbor Elf and he rampaged it still trades, which is kind of what we saw last turn. That's not actually a great play for Jacob when that happens.
Yeah, I actually think that the Gorklan Rampager on the Strangleroot Geist, had the Strangleroot Geist just come back, he would rather have that Gorklan Rampager in play. Very similar to what BBD wrote about in his article this week. A lot of players look at the Gorklan Rampager, don't even see that it's a 4/4 for 4.
Right.
While that's not ideal in most situations, sometimes you just want to keep throwing creatures on the board, and we're going to see, although here, he gets to keep around the Flinthoof Boar.
Yeah, but I think that's another perfect example of what BBD was talking about. He probably stands, okay, so this way he did get 4 points of damage across and trample, and that's pretty valuable. So the question is that more or less valuable than right now he has a 3/3 on the board? If he'd have played the Gorklan Rampager, he would have a 4/4 trample. So he'd have a better creature, but his opponent would have 4 more life points. It's a really close call. I think Tobey makes the right decision here and decides that life total is just really important at this point.
Meanwhile, the Strangleroot Geist not coming back, certainly haunting again, would have had Eric at 3 this turn instead.
Yeah, that's a pretty huge play. And as we saw...
although it looks like it's not going to matter because Eric can overload Mizium Mortars here.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's pretty much his only play. He could play the Garruk, make a beast.
Well, it depends what he thinks his opponent has. He does need to make sure, and he's going to go ahead and do that. He needs to make sure that Dome Rod doesn't get to ultimate, or even just wants to get the Dome Rod down as soon as possible. Every turn he leaves it around, the Dome Rod potentially fights another thing.
Well, to me, against this Kibler deck, the scariest card to me is Thundermaw Hellkite. And letting the Dome Rod sit around as long as Eric is just gets us only closer to both Hellrider and Thundermaw Hellkite, both of which are just extremely scary at this point in the game.
I want to back up a second with that last Gorklan Rampager. So looking at the Dome Rod, there was a chance, instead of blood rushing the Rampager, that Tobey could have just played out the Rampager and then had it fight the 3/3 beast.
Yeah.
Which he actually didn't do that turn, which seems, that seemed like another option he could have taken.
Eric top decks a Kessig Wolf Run, one of the 3 fireballs that we can top deck in the Jund deck, and it's going to go on the offense. And the red-green aggro deck in the position where it's deciding to block.
Yeah, I think it's attacking the Dome Rod. Vasilevsky's at a pretty good spot. When the red-green aggro deck stops attacking, that's obviously a really good spot. I think to a certain degree, Tobey was hoping to chump block and get his Dome up to 7. Kessig Wolfrun's really going to take away that play for him.
Yeah. So we're going to double block here, making sure that the Dome can soak up as much damage as possible. Yeah, the Kessig Wolfrun certainly throws a wrench in the works for trying to get the Dome Rod up to ultimate.
Yeah, Kessig Wolfrun makes blocking very difficult.
Absolutely.
So what it really will do is it'll force Tobey to go back to an aggressive line, even though right now an aggressive line doesn't look particularly appealing for him.
So this is going to be +4/+0 to the beast. That's going to deal 3 damage to the Dome Rod, knocking it down to 2. And all of the creatures leave the board. Oh, by the way, Garruk still exists.
Still makes a beast.
Another turtle is going to enter the battlefield off of the beast factory that is Garruk Primal Hunter. The other cool trick that the Jund deck gets to do occasionally when it has a surviving Garruk for a couple of turns as well as a Kessig Wolfrun is that it gets to Kessig Wolfrun the beast
and then draw a million cards. Yeah. And we see that elf cast from Jacob Tobey. We knew that his first draw of the turn was not a creature because it bricked on Dome last turn, and the elf looks like the only creature he has left on the board. I'm starting to feel like he's going to fall about 6 life points short of getting this game.
Yep. And I think that now we did point out the scavenging or a Strangleroot Geist trigger miss earlier, but I actually don't think that it would have mattered. It would have had Eric at 3 instead of at 6, and Eric still would have been in very good position to take down this game.
So rather than drawing a bunch of cards with Garrick, he's just going to opt to develop his mana base, continue to make beasts. If I'm Eric Vasilevsky, the thing I have to worry about in this situation is a top-decked Thundermaw Hellkite.
Yep.
Which is, I'm not sure if this is better than just drawing a lot of cards. I think next turn he will want to draw cards. Once he gets a Putrefy or some instant speed removal spell in his hand, the game is pretty much unlosable for him. So he needs to rush to that point so that he can get the play off.
Yeah, and even though he has the opportunity to make 9 6/6 worms here, which would also quickly end the game.
Yeah, they don't have haste. So
they don't have haste, so there's a window
here
where the Thundermaw Hellkite could end it.
Let's see, does he get it? He hasn't slammed it, so my guess is no.
This would be quite the slow roll if he
oh,
didn't.
By the way,
So I imagine. Exactly. Oh, yeah, that's what this card does. Interesting. Well, Arbor Elf is going to enter the red zone. Looks like a handful of lands. There's another forest.
Yep, and I think what he was trying to do with that Arbor Elf is if he realizes his only out is Thundermaw Hellkite, well, the only way it's going to be lethal
is if he gets in that one extra damage.
Just throw it out. They're like, well, if he doesn't block, he gives me this extra out. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Vasilevsky doesn't bite.
And he top-decked a Doomblade, so it also doesn't matter.
Okay, so once he has the Doomblade, he's going to go ahead and continue to make beasts.
Yep. Just keep making beasts. I don't know. I might have gone for the style points and made the worms.
You made the worms, yeah.
It's -6, right?
Yep, it's -6. He has the ultimate available.
I would have gone for the style points.
To be fair, with Casting Wolf Run, it's a lethal swing either way. Sure. So, but you're right. The style points we put about 1,000,000 6/6s into play, or certainly a lethal number.
So he's attacking for 9 with Jacob at 14.
He's going to try to Wolf Run for 5.
Table number 201.
1, 2,
They are
3.
going to be right in front of the
Yep, he's going to go for it. No fear.
All right, and that'll do it.
We're going to quickly go to game 2. So Eric Vasilevsky on Jund takes down game 1 on the backs of some a little bit of mana flooding on Jacob Tobey, a little bit of one miss trigger, as well as being able to stabilize based on how much removal he actually had.
Right. You know, a pretty close game, and it really shows, you know, we said it before kind of on camera that Magic really can kind of tend to be a game of inches, especially up at this level. So, you know, just that one miss like that oftentimes can actually be the difference between winning or losing.
Yeah, and I say that it wouldn't have mattered, but I'm probably wrong because that 3 points could have led to a different line of play. He would have had to use the Mizium Mortars on a turn when he instead cast the Garrick to start developing his board, which cascaded to the Keswick Wolf Run. You know. So there were other options that Eric was open to because Jacob wasn't putting on that much pressure.
Right.
So moving to the sideboards, we're going to take a look at the sideboards. You can follow along with Jacob's deck at home if you want to click on Brian Kibler's most recent iteration of the red-green aggro deck that now includes 2 Chandra Pyromaster, which is a card that I actually like quite a bit in this matchup.
Yeah, so we saw this actually in our first round of the day, that Chandra Pyromaster has pretty much been adapted in the spot where Gruul Warchant used to be.
Yeah.
Gruul Warchant, the idea was to like get that one extra turn to pass by a line of Thragtusks or a line of Huntmasters. Chandra probably just a better card at doing that because on an empty board it has more impact. It's good in this matchup. You board in generally against any of the Thragtusk decks.
Right, and it's better against the Jund decks that have Lifebane Zombie in it. Eric's does not have it in the main deck and won't have it after sideboard either, even if he had it available. But still making a Thragtusk unable to block when your whole game plan is to attack.
Yeah.
Very powerful effect. He also has 4 Burning Earths in the sideboard. No stranger to that card either, although we've seen Jund face down 2 Burning Earths and win a game today.
Right, so the trick with Burning Earths we saw earlier is that you have to play it on a board where you're ahead. So out of a red-green aggro deck. We saw Mono Red can basically just play Burning Earth whenever it wants to, but this deck gets a little more picky about when it wants it. That said, you're probably still going to see the 4 of those come in, and you're going to see 3 Volcanic Strengths, which are for this matchup as well. I don't know, that's like 9 sideboard cards, which are all pretty good in the matchup.
Yep, and he's probably going to have to take out some of these mana animals. They're not necessarily very good against, well, certainly not good against Bonfire of the Damned, but not good against the deck in general.
Right, in general, Jund is trying to play its strategy here is to play 1 for 1 removal until it can cast a creature to blank the remaining creatures in Tobey's deck. You know, for example, maybe you leave Tobey with an Arbor Elf and you play a Thragtusk, then the Arbor Elf doesn't matter. So what Tobey's going to try to do is make it so that every creature matters. As long as every creature trades with that Thragtusk, that makes Jund's game plan a lot harder. So yeah, 4 Arbor Elves, 2 Elvish Mystics. These cards are really not as exciting in a post-board matchup against Jund.
The problem with that, of course, is we are only playing 24 lands, which sounds like quite a bit. That's about normal for most decks these days. However, we're still an aggro deck, and we still have 5 drops and a ton of 4 drops after sideboard.
Right. I mean, anytime you cut 6 mana sources from a deck, you're going to change how the deck fundamentally feels.
Absolutely.
Even if those mana sources are just little 1/1s.
So in Eric's sideboard, he has access to Barter in Blood, as well as 2 Liliana of the Veil, both of which are mostly for the Bant Hexproof matchup, but can come in handy in this type of matchup. Do you think that he will bring those in, knowing that Jacob Tobey has main deck Mana Elves? Do you think that he will suspect that he takes those out?
Well, there's a lot of things. He wants to just board in more removal in this matchup. So when you look at the cards that matter, you'd say, okay, and the cards that don't matter. Rakdos' Return isn't particularly strong in the matchup. Gork Primal Hunter's okay, but you can just as easily end the game with an Olivia and a Huntmaster of the Fells. What you need to make sure you do is survive the early game. We saw that Vasilevsky's deck is pretty weak to Strangle Rootgeist. He's going to board in the 2 Pillar of Flames for sure. Barter in Blood, outside of Strangle Rootgeist, probably gets a lot of value in this matchup, so I would imagine he'll board that one in as well. It's just it's a 2-for-1. It's a fine spell for him to cast.
He's also got Pillar of Flames in the sideboard. Having seen the Mana Elves and the Strangle Rootgeist, I imagine that those would come in, but those actually aren't very good against Jacob's deck. They're just they're decent, but they're not very good.
They don't kill too many things. They kill Strangle Rootgeists. They kill Scavenging Oozes that have just been cast. They can kill a Flinthoof Boar if a mountain's not in place. There's all these kind of ifs.
Yeah, they can kill a Domery Raid if it just fought, things like that.
Right, so they're not great in the matchup. I think he'll still use them just because it's a way to 1-for-1 with Strangle Rootgeist, and that's really important in the matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. Among other cards that Eric has at his disposal, Duress and Slaughter Games, both 2-ofs. I don't imagine he will bring those in. He has 2 Golgari Charms, not for this matchup, although they can take out a Burning Earth.
They can take out a Burning Earth, so it's really tempting to board them in. It really depends on whether or not he thinks Tobey is kept in mana creatures, which we see he has.
Which he has, yes. The Golgari Charms pick up a lot of value if Arbor Elves are still in the red-green aggro deck. And as we see on turn 1, Jacob leads things off with an Arbor Elf, while Eric has Overgrown Tomb.
So, I almost want to say it looks like Tobey doesn't have red.
No, he does. He has 1 source of red mana.
All right, so that's going to be well, that's actually with the Arbor Elf is enough because the source is a forest.
Yes, and he's going to be able to cast any of his red spells on turn 2, assuming Eric does not play an elimination spell on turn 2, which he does not. It is a Scavenging Ooze.
So Scavenging Ooze, not the hugest deal in this matchup. Basically, what Vasilevsky is going to hope to do is to get a good trade-off with that Scavenging Ooze.
So we have a Hell Rider on turn 3. That's going to deal itself. It's going to for itself. It's going to deal 1 and then deal 3, dropping Eric down to 16.
That's a pretty good start. Hell Rider. Anytime Hell Rider gets to swing once and live is really good for the Hell Rider player. Usually, it's kind of like this burn spell where you swing and attack and it dies.
Or it's an enchantment.
Or it's an enchantment, so you don't swing with
exactly,
it. But every time you get to actually swing with it is really strong for the deck. If you can follow it up with a second one, it's usually game-ending.
Yep.
As you see here, that's why Vasilevsky just immediately
in combat is going to do that.
Blade and eat it.
Unfortunately for him, I do believe that Jacob, and as we will see on the following turn, is going to play a land and then play a 5-drop by the name of Thundermaw Hellkite. Yes, he's going to be able to play a land. I think he has to pay 2 life for it. Oh, nope, there's a forest. So we're going to target the Stomping Ground to be able to play Thundermaw.
So Vasilevsky already used a Doomblade on the Hell Rider. The question will be whether or not he has another one of those unconditional removal spells. He's going to need one pretty quick as Thundermaw doesn't waste its time in killing.
Well, he's got Abrupt Decay, or not Abrupt Decay, he's got Tragic Slip. So he's going to be able to use that to his favor if he has another elimination spell to take out the Arbor.
Yeah, he needs a second kill spell to do it.
And Pillar Flame won't do it, by the way.
Right.
Because Pillar Flame removes it from the game, so the Morbid trigger will not trigger.
It looks like he doesn't have one. He has Scavenging. He makes a second Scavenging Ooze, but he has right now no way to deal with the Thundermaw Hellkite.
So Jacob's going to be able to untap with this Thundermaw Hellkite and attack with it again.
It's huge.
It's enormous. He's also got a Gore-Clan Rampager in hand. Now, the trap that Jacob might run into here is that he has the Gore-Clan Rampager, so he's going to want to attack with his Arbor Elf.
Oh, wow.
The Arbor Elf is going to become a 5/5.
Now the trap here is that that's killing a creature, which is doing exactly what Vasilevsky wants it to do. So he's going to take a lot of damage here. That's 4 trample and 5 in the air. That's going to drop him to 2, but it will enable Morbid. So now that this Tragic Slip can take out the Thundermaw Hellkite.
Yep, and unless Jacob has a 2 green mana follow-up, 2 green mana follow-up, then he's going to be somewhat out of gas here.
All right, and he's gonna go ahead and so Thundermaw
Gets
dies. and
eaten?
It gets eaten by the Scavenging Ooze. So that puts Vasilevsky back up to, I believe, 3.
Yep.
Okay.
And there's also the Gore-Clan Rampager still in the graveyard for Eric to eat. Once again, I think that I would have just rather had the Gore-Clan Rampager in play rather than use it for its Blood Rush ability. I think that using that ability was a bit of a trap.
Especially since he didn't use his other 2 mana there, having just a 4/4 Trampler in play is pretty good. Also, I think it plays around Tragic Slip, which is huge.
Yes. So this is going to become a 6/6 Scavenging Ooze. Eric is going to go up to 4, it looks like. And
a third
there's another
Ooze.
Scavenging Ooze.
So Vasilevsky's slowly grinding his way back in. He's got up to 4 life. He has the biggest creature around. A 6/6 is very hard for red-green aggro to deal with. Remember, he's still just 1 Thundermaw Hellkite. Well, right now, not literally, but it takes only a Thundermaw Hellkite to really push it back in Jacob Tobey's favor.
He has a red spell of some kind. I didn't see which one it was.
I feel like it's a Burning Earth. If it is, it's a little late.
A little late to be burning some earth here.
So we'll see what Tobey can do. He just needs to stick one more creature. Remember, the red-green aggro deck, this Kibler-style aggro, actually has very few burn spells. So it actually 6. You can draw to a lower life total against it than you would think.
Yeah, and these Scavenging Oozes, by the way, which we didn't point out during sideboarding, also very important against mid to late game Strangleroot Geists, removing the Undying trigger from haunting you anymore than it already does.
Well, this is why I think the Ooze is such a versatile card. We saw that first one as a 2-drop, just trade. And then it's also a great late game card.
And now we're going to cast a 4/4.
That's good, but there's a 6/6 on the board, so it's still not going to solve this problem. It gives him a good creature to work with, though.
Yeah.
And maybe he's 1 Volcanic Strength away from having a lethal swing.
That's true. If he brought in the Volcanic Strength, or if he brought in the Zealous Conscripts, either of which will do it here. Jacob is only at 8, though. So he's probably going to have to throw this Arbor Elf under the tires.
Well, that's going to be pretty close. If he does that, then suddenly his possible Volcanic Strength wouldn't be lethal.
And there's a Putrefy, so
may not matter.
May not matter here, and he has to chump the 6 mana or the 6 power guy now.
All right, so now Scavenging Ooze eat it.
So Jacob goes to 5.
And it's left with no board, just 1 card in hand.
Yep, and I'm not sure that even Thundermaw Hellkite can do it for him now.
And we see, I really like the game plan that Vasilevsky has executed this game. If you look at the board, it just kind of tells the story. We see 2 Scavenging Oozes in play, a 3rd one exiled, and in his graveyard.
Ooh,
3.
Hey,
oh
well,
wow.
That'll do it. Well, we brought in Zealous Conscripts, so that is certainly an out.
All right.
We didn't expect him to be bringing in Zealous Conscripts against this deck. But that could just be entirely wrong. So let's talk about Zealous Conscripts.
We didn't expect him to bring in that. Could just be entirely wrong.
Yeah, I was not expecting him to bring in Zealous Conscripts against Jund. I thought that there'd be too many. If he's stabilizing, there'd be too many bodies on the board.
Okay, so you bring in it against Jund for exactly the reason we just saw there. So a lot of times we get in these situations where he attacks his opponent down to a certain number, and then he needs to find a way to sneak across these last few damage. It's kind of the reason he boards in Volcanic Strength. Zealous Conscripts does do the same thing a lot of the time.
I guess, yeah, I see that. Now I see
you
that.
see
But,
that.
but when you
it's
think
not always as good as that.
Yeah, it's not always that good, of course. That's the dream scenario.
What card can win here? Well,
yeah,
how
the
about
only
Zealous
one that they've
Conscripts?
printed that could bring it back here is something that can.
No. To be fair, Mark of Mutiny would have been exactly 7.
Sure, that's fair. Mark of Mutiny would have been exactly 7.
So there's a
Act
second
of Treason
card.
wouldn't have
Nope,
done it.
That's not good enough.
So Yeah, I can see now why that would happen, but you wouldn't think that a 2-mana aura where you're not really trying to play on the axis of removal, like if you're
Right.
playing that on a creature, you're opening yourself up to removal from the Jund deck.
Right, whereas Zealous Conscripts, you get a 3/3 when you're done.
Right.
So it's probably, because of that, it's a little bit better against the Jund deck. It hits a little bit harder, too, because it's, it's +3 damage and a threaten effect. So
And
it's
now I see why we kept in the mana animals, is because we were planning on bringing in even more 5-drops.
Yeah, so you probably can't cut all of them if you're gonna go on the Zealous Conscripts plan.
I figured it out. I
All
finally figured it out. Well, that was an exciting end to that game, and we're going to be able to go to a third game as a result. Eric Vasilevsky and Jacob Tobey. Jacob Tobey, the Denver native, up against the local boy Eric Vasilevsky. Do you see any changes to being on the play or on the draw here?
Well, I mean, the aggro deck always wants to be on the play.
Of course.
So, as far as changes in strategy, I'm not sure that it lets Eric keep a lot of looser hands to be on the play. He really has to be pretty particular about what he keeps on the draw. He would almost always like to have a Tragic Slipper, Pillar of Flame in a hand that he keeps on the draw. Obviously, you can't engineer that, but I think post board, he has. Looks like he only has 4 1-mana removals even after board, so he can't really count on that.
Right.
But yeah, on the play, he could even keep something like a hand with, say, 3 lands, Farseek, Huntmaster, which is like a good hand on the play. On the draw, that hand could very likely get steamrolled. Sure. So, he actually has this larger breadth of hands that he can keep. And I think that's the advantage. So it means that it's much more likely that he gets to keep a 7-card hand.
Absolutely. So bringing in, you don't think that if he didn't have the Pillar of Flames in already, he certainly does now, but he almost certainly had them in already.
I would think he has them in already.
Do you think that Jacob being on the draw, he brings in, for example, he has a 1-of Garruk Relentless in the sideboard, yet another powerful 4-drop that can be an endless stream of power. Do you think that he changes even more into a mid-range deck?
I'm not sure that a stream of 2/2s is that great in the matchup. There's nothing good to fight. So really all Garruk does is make 2/2s. Is that worth it for 4 mana to continue making 2/2s? I don't know. It's pretty close. I'm hesitant to do it just because I already want to board in Burning Earths. I already want to board in the Zealous Conscripts. There's a certain amount, your mana, I don't want to change my curve that much.
Right. It looks like we're already bringing in at least 10 cards.
Right, you're already bringing in Chandra Pyremaster, that's 2 4-drops. Burning Earths, that's 6 4-drops. 2 Zealous Conscripts, that's 2 more 5-drops. That's 8 cards at 4+. I mean, I'm not even sure you can bring in that many without really messing up your mana base. I'm hesitant to board in all 8 of those, and all 8 of those are cards that I want more than Garruk Relentless. And I think that's why I'd leave them in the board.
So it looks like Jacob kept his opening hand while Eric had to mulligan on the play.
Yeah, so I was saying he had a larger breadth of hands that he could keep. Unfortunately, it looks like he just had something with lands that he couldn't actually keep.
Luckily, this sort of matchup is a place where Jund can sometimes recover very, very quickly, especially on the draw, because he can get the turn 3 Huntmaster before any even 3-drops come down for Jacob Tobey.
When his game plan is 1-for-1ing, mulliganing can be a little bit harder. When his game plan is going to be dropping some threat, Huntmaster or Thragtusk or Olivia, then it's a lot more forgiving.
So turn 1 Blood Crypt is matched up by Arbor Elf off of a Forest. Eric does have the turn 2 Farseek. Almost certainly going and getting Stomping Ground here, not just for the sake of being the 3 combination, but also because Stomping Ground is the most important dual land combination to have in the deck, because you have both Scavenging Ooze and Olivia, and you want to be able to activate both abilities as often as possible.
So Vasilevsky looks like he's kept the kind of hand that will do very fine with a mulligan. It looks like he has a Bonfire as his only removal spell. He has a Thragtusk he's trying to ramp into, and I don't know. I think he also has a Garruk Primal Hunter that he's actually kept in. That's a little surprising to me, as the card tends to not be as strong against aggro decks. But right here, it really, if it is a Garruk that he has, it'll go a long way in helping to get him back card advantage.
Absolutely. Turn 2 Dome Re-Raid from Jacob Tobey is the play. So that's going to quickly go up to 4. And Liliana of the Veil.
All right.
Going to make Arbor Elf hit the bricks.
So the Liliana actually comes out of the sideboard. It's good in this matchup with the exception of Strangleroot Geist. So it's one of those, it's like a risky card to board in because it's very good here, as we saw.
Yep.
When his opponent has a Strangleroot Geist, it's like actively bad. So it's close, you know?
And the Flinthoof Boar is going to bore that Liliana to death. And then Jacob's going to try to get more value off of the Domery Raid. Doesn't do so, but it is slowly ticking up towards that very dangerous ultimate.
And I don't believe we have a 5th land for Vasilevsky.
Ooh.
He drew a 2nd Thragtusk, though. So if he hits that land, Thragtusk into Thragtusk is one of the ideal hands for him.
The problem here is the card that we just saw a little tiny view of. We've also got a Hell Rider.
That's like a pretty good card to draw.
That's not a bad one to reveal off of Domery Rod. So it's half dozen or the other. We can either slam this Hell Rider that we just picked up, attack for 1,000,000, or we can do what Jacob's going to do and play. There's the Burning Earth.
Right. Even better than the Hell Rider is a Burning Earth there. He's ahead and he wants to seal that. This is going to do so much damage to Vasilevsky.
This is going to put Eric to
7 to make this play.
And then he's going to go back up to 15 with the Thragtusk. Not ideal.
So what I was going to say, what he could do in this situation was Bonfire for 2 to keep that Domery off ultimate. But that's just such a painful proposition right now. Like, can you even in good conscience do that?
Yeah, I don't know. Where does Domery ultimate?
7.
Okay.
Right,
so we do have one extra turn before
Tobey hasn't used his Domery yet.
Oh, sure.
No, so it's going to be at 7.
Ah, fair enough. Yeah. Well, it's not going ultimate this turn, so we can we can Bonfire next turn if we really want to.
Right, and Domery Rod is one of those Planeswalkers that in the decks, some Planeswalkers' ultimates are good, and some are just variations on win the game.
Yeah.
In this sort of deck, Domery pretty much falls into the 2nd category. It's almost impossible to win after a Domery emblem.
So Jacob took 2 damage to play that Hell Rider, and then attacked with Flinthoof Boar, which dealt 1 damage to Eric Vasilevsky thanks to a Hell Rider trigger. And now we're going to the blocker's step. Looks like he is going to let that happen, question mark?
Yeah, so this is that situation we said that sometimes Hell Rider is just an enchantment.
Yeah.
Right, we see it come down and actually not attack because he doesn't really want to trade it for a Thragtusk.
Yeah, I see a lot of a lot of inexperienced players with Hell Rider. They think that the Hell Rider has to attack in order to get the trigger.
Right, no it doesn't. And a lot of times, especially when you have a 2nd Hell Rider in your hand, you don't want it to.
Absolutely. And so Hell Rider's going to stand in front of the Thragtusk in order for Domery to be able to stick around.
Domery's only at 6. I'm not positive. I thought it was supposed to go to 7 last turn. Maybe I'm incorrect there. Well, I don't know if it was used. In any case, he'll get another chance to put it up to 7 and make an emblem with it.
So we still have this Flinthoof Boar sticking around. We still have these Thragtusks and this 2nd body on the 1 Thragtusk.
Yeah, so Vasilevsky's actually stabilizing a bit here.
It's going to be very difficult for him to deal with a Domery emblem, so he has to get rid of the Domery emblem at some point.
All right, an attack with Flinthoof Boar is going to get Gore-Clan Rampager across, so that beast token does not trade.
Now that one, I think, was actually a very good use of Rampager.
Well, that was correct. So we see Domery going up to that lethal 7 now, does not find a guy on top. If Tobey can just play a chump blocker, though, he's going to get a Domery emblem out of the deal.
And I think he has another Gore-Clan Rampager that he's going to play.
Right, so if Vasilevsky wants to hit this Domery, he's going to have to cast the Bonfire of the Damned in his hand so that it doesn't get an emblem. And with that Burning Earth, that means it'll be his last spell of the game.
Yep. Not in a good spot for Eric Vasilevsky here. He's probably going to have to swing into this Domery. He just can't deal it enough damage to impact the game on a meaningful level, because eventually, even if it doesn't ultimate next turn, it will certainly, the game will either be over or it will get up to ultimate.
Yes.
Because of this 4/4 and 3/3.
So see how it plays out first. So Tobey's going to make the trade. He's protecting his Domery as he wants that emblem. A beast token's made. We'll get the actual token there in a sec.
That dice is a 3/3 beast.
Or turtle.
Or turtle. Creature type beast. Yep, Eric does not have a ton of good options here. He can cast the Garruk and make another beast. The problem with that play, of course, being that all of Jacob's creatures for the rest of the game will have double strike, trample, haste, and hexproof.
Right, and he already has a 3/3 in place. That's just as bad. I mean, I think he's contemplating just bonfiring for 1 here.
I think that is what's going to happen here. Is we're going to bonfire for 1, fall to 4.
Yeah.
Deal the 1 damage to the Domery.
I'm not sure the difference between bonfiring for 1 and bonfiring for 2, just because like they're both,
Yeah.
it's like almost your last spell of the game no matter which one you do. So he's going to then Tragic Slip the Flint of Boar. But at 3 life, I think Vasilevsky's done playing spells for the game.
I would agree. And when your opponent has as many basic lands in play and as much life as Jacob does, and you're going to be able to ultimate in just 1 turn after that, unless, of course, he didn't find any creatures.
Well, the difference is at 3 life, Vasilevsky has left himself the ability to draw Golgari Charm.
That is very true.
So if he has Golgari Charm in his deck, now he can then cast other spells.
Well,
Otherwise,
here's the other thing, is that Jacob was unable to find a creature.
A lot's going to have to go wrong for Jacob for him not to be able to find something, but he hasn't found anything yet. It's a land, passes the turn. It's possible that, it's so many things have to go right for this 3/3 to kill Domri Rod and kill Jacob. That's at least 1 for the Domri, and then 4, that's like 5, that's 5 turns of bricking that Jacob would have to do.
Yep. And it looks like that's a creature. Oh, or he's not going to reveal it.
All right, so he didn't, it looks like the Domri Rod's going to get taken down here.
Yeah,
so
he's going to be
Tobey-
able to fight off the Domri Rod, but he's not going to be able to play any other spells.
All right, so Domri's gone. Jacob, we know that top card's a brick.
He's going
if
to
he
have to
has
find a
3 more-
Golgari Charm
if he has
before... yeah.
3 more bricks. Remember, if Vasilevsky was at 6 life, he could cast that Thragtusk in his hand, but he's not. So he actually just, his hand is Olivia, Thragtusk, Garruk, all of these, they just aren't cards.
Yep, he needs to find one of the 2 Golgari Charms in his 75. We aren't even sure, although that look makes me think that it's in his 75.
So how much justice would this be, as we saw Jacob Tobey kind of one-outing Vasilevsky last game to get the match, if Jacob actually does, 5 bricks in a row?
That would be pretty insane, although...
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen because we have just found Scavenging Ooze with a graveyard full of goodies. And we're going to probably make that an enormous Scavenging Ooze and gain 2 life because of the 2 untapped forests.
Right. 1, and he may even eat more than 2 creatures and be fine tapping his non-basics, just because the size on the Scavenging Ooze, well, actually, it just needs to be a 4/4. 4/4 is about the same as any other size. It's all lethal.
Yeah. And it's all lethal and it's all tragic slippable.
Right.
So a 4/4 is a perfectly reasonable size. So he's
Yeah.
going to leave it right there.
You'd actually want to leave additional creatures in your graveyard in case you draw another Scavenging Ooze.
So Jacob's deciding if he can do anything before just attacking, which
Right.
he can't.
Turtle blocks.
Eric is going to have to find Golgari Charm on his next draw step.
Yeah, he's going to have to go Guard Charm his way down to 1.
Unless this is another Burning Earth.
That would be...
Which
and
it
a
is.
second one.
And that's it. That's the
I
game.
think that takes away all of Vasilevsky's outs. He's going to... In response to that Burning Earth, he Tragic Slips the
Tragic
Scavenging
slips the
Ooze.
Scavenging Ooze.
It means he...
It means that he survives.
But he's at 2,
But
and
at what
any mana,
cost?
and every land he taps deals 2 to him.
At what cost, mind you?
Okay, he has 2 swamps in his deck.
Okay.
So he could,
all right.
if he draws his swamps, he can cast the other Tragic Slip.
Yes. Perfect.
Right. He can't cast the Liliana
That's
because
exactly
there's
where
no
we wanna
colorless.
be.
There's no third land, so he can't cast the Liliana.
Right.
That's all he can do at this point. I don't think that's. I mean, if he boarded in duress, he could cast that.
Right. This is not the Stephen Mann popularized Moto version that had 4 Caravan Vigils. Have you seen this list?
I haven't seen.
There's a
that.
version of Jund that Stephen Mann top-aided a premiere event with that has 4 Caravan Vigils instead of 3 copies of Blood Crypt and another basic.
So the
land or
idea
another
is to
land.
play a lot of basics.
Yes,
so you
the
can get
idea
around.
he has 5 or 6 basics in the deck, and the Caravan Vigils find those basics, as do the Farseeks sometimes, to be able to still cast your Thragtusks.
Well, we have one of the basics, so
you
there's
go.
a Tragic Slip is maybe online.
Well,
Yep.
Tragic Slip's
That's
online.
but that's the only card. He only has 2 in his 75. He's already just cast one of them.
Yeah.
So as if Jacob's entire rest of his deck is bricks, which we know not to be the case looking at the deck lists.
Eric's out is for Jacob to have sideboarded out all of his creatures, I believe, at this point.
All remaining creatures.
All remaining
I don't think
creatures?
that's possible.
Also not possible. Eventually, Jacob is going to find a creature.
Oh, there's one.
That's a pretty good one.
It could be any creature. It doesn't. As long. All right.
Yep. And that'll be the game. Jacob pulls out that one after we thought that he was going to be quickly O2'd.
Right.
In game 2, he pulled it out with a Zealous Conscripts, and in game 3, a pair of Burning Earths light the earth on fire. And Eric Vasilevsky is consumed by them, and Jacob will move on to 6-1.
Yeah, so Burning Earth, once again, showing that's one of the more influential print cards from M14. The reason why it's influential has to do with the fact that it's a non-reciprocal effect. It's not just a mana barbs, it actually lets one player continue to play spells, and I think we're really seeing how it's affecting deck building. You know, you see someone like Jacob Tobey in his deck is playing 15 basic lands, and we're actually, as you were saying, we're seeing things like Jund decks playing Caravan Vigil, we're seeing blue-white red decks starting to play Evolving Wilds, and